morning, everyone, and welcome to the second leg of this year's fifth National Career Advocacy Congress with the theme Learn, Adapt, Thrive, Rising Above Employment Challenges in the Post Pandemic Future. I'm Jessica Garcia, your host for today. Now, to formally start today's session, may I invite everyone to join us for a brief prayer.
God of all, thank you for each mind and heart that fills the presence of this gathering. We come to you this hour asking for your blessing and help for the task we set out to accomplish today. We pray for guidance in the matters at hand and ask that you clearly show us how to conduct our work with the spirit of joy and enthusiasm. Help us work together and encourage each other to excellence. O God, our healer, show your compassion for the whole human family that is in turmoil and burdened with illness and with fear. Come to our aid in this time of pandemic. Heal our world and our bodies. Strengthen our hearts and minds, and in the midst of turmoil, give us hope and peace. We ask this in the name of the Lord, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Again, welcome to the second leg or second webinar of this year's NCAC. We are delighted to have strong and active participants here in Zoom, with many more tuning in via Facebook Live. Hello to everyone. Once again, we thank you for being with us here this morning. Now, today's forum will focus on the sub-theme, the hybrid workplace, rethinking employee engagement and productivity in the new normal. We shall identify the evolving tasks and functions of career advocates and registered guidance counselors, align them with the demands of the changing labor market, and provide mechanisms to strengthen the harmony and collaboration between management and employees in the hybrid work model. To formally welcome us in our activity, may I call on DOLE Undersecretary for Labor Relations, Social Protection and Policy Support Cluster, Attorney Benjo Santos M. Benavides for his welcome remarks.
Thank you for that brief introduction. To our partners in the Career Guidance Advocacy Program Working Group, the Department of Education, the Department of Science and Technology, Commission on Higher Education, Professional Regulation Commission, Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, Federation of Career Guidance Advocates Network of the Philippines, to our esteemed resource speakers from the IT and Business Process Association of the Philippines, International Labor Organization, and Globe Telecom, to our guest for this morning's panel discussion, representatives from the Asian Institute of Management and Asian Development Bank, today's participating guidance counselors, career advocates, members of the Peso Managers Association of the Philippines, HR practitioners, representatives from the academy, industry associations, employer and labor groups, to our colleague in the government and the Department of Labor and Employment, regional and field offices, a pleasant morning to all. I am making this call from the city of Zamboanga, so let me greet you. Buenos dias a todos. Welcome to the second leg of the 5th National Career Advocacy Congress webinar series. This year's National Career Advocacy Congress carries the overall theme Learn, Adapt, Thrive, Rising Above Employment Challenges in the Post-Pandemic Future. And indeed, today's webinar shall empower our career advocates and key stakeholders to face new barriers and hurdles presented to us by the compounded effects on the labor market of the global pandemic and the fourth and fifth industrial revolutions. For today's webinar, our subject is the hybrid workplace, rethinking employee engagement and productivity in the new normal, focusing on adapting to the structural changes brought about by the pandemic. We will be tackling the limitless potential of information technology in sustaining business operations, developing our workforce, and fostering cooperation in a socially distanced but digitally linked world. My hope is that this forum affirms your strong belief and commitment in your important work as human resource practitioners and career advocates, and help us all recognize the full worth of career guidance, advocacy, and career development support in these changing times. May today's discussions inspire us to exchange ideas and learn from one another's experience that we might adapt successfully to the demands of the fast transforming world of work and guide our stakeholders with confidence to thrive in the new normal.
Thank you, Yusek Benjo. We are with you in the challenge to face these new barriers and hurdles presented to us by the compounded effects on the global market of the global pandemic as well as the fourth and fifth industrial revolutions. Now let's get down to business with the plenary presentations. We have divided this portion into three different presentations from various key stakeholders. To start off, the first presentation will focus on harnessing the power of technology for human resources. Our first speaker leads talent attraction and strategy development of the IT and Business Process Association of the Philippines, or IBPAP, which includes industry awareness programs and workforce development initiatives to support the continued growth and overall competitiveness of the Philippine IT BPM sector. She has 18 years of industry experience, having held leadership roles in the areas of learning and development, client services, and operations support. Everyone, let us welcome Miss Frankie Antolin.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for inviting the IT and Business Process Association of the Philippines to the 5th National Career Advocacy Congress. The information technology and business process management industry, or ITBPM, started in the Philippines as early as the 1980s with basic encoding, IT programming, and in-house development. More than 40 years down the road, the sector has grown to over 1,000 companies and generated jobs for more than 1.3 million Filipinos, while indirectly impacting close to 4.3 million more people across the nation through its multiplier effect. Today, the industry is the country's largest job generator and one of its biggest private sector employers, with the subsectors that comprise the IT BPM industry: animation, game development, contact centers, global in-house centers, healthcare information management, and IT and software services. It is a major source of foreign exchange with reported revenues of 26.7 billion US dollars in 2020. Equally important is that the sector is also one of the largest investors in training and developing Filipino talent, spending anywhere between 5 to 10 times more than other industries on continuous upskilling, reskilling, and immersions to global best practices. Through decades of change and more recent periods of uncertainty brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic, the Philippine IT BPM sector has consistently demonstrated its resilience and agility. The health crisis has brought about several changes in terms of client needs and demands. There's a need to modify prevailing work models and the accelerated, perhaps even exponential pace of digital transformation. In the face of these challenges, the industry has still been able to sustain its annual growth, both in terms of jobs and revenues. A study by the Everest Group determined that globally, the sector will increase between 7 to 8% in terms of headcount and between 8 to 13% in terms of revenues. This growth is driven by positive enterprise sentiment, vaccine rollout, fiscal stimulus across multiple geographies, pent-up demand, digital acceleration, and need for cost optimization. Inputs gathered through a survey we carried out in November of this year provide additional insights, with more than half of the respondents seeing as much as double-digit growth in 2021. There is also an increasing need for technology-oriented and complex services and emerging business process management subsegments. But while some of these emerging BPM subsegments may be new to some, we recognize that many industries have been going through disruption of a technological and digital nature even long before the pandemic. IBPAP, as the umbrella organization of the IT BPM industry, conducts a periodic exercise to develop its sectoral roadmap. In 2016, the IBPAP Roadmap to 2022 was published, and one of the key priorities named is human capital and how industry practitioners can and need to harness the power of technology in order to pivot to higher value services. The emergence of new technology has created various opportunities to pivot to higher value functions, which you will see in 2022 will comprise more than 70% of skills demand, coming from a little over 50% of mid to high value skills in 2016. We had no idea then that something was going to hyperactivate the world's acceleration to digital. And so for industry players, it is imperative to expedite investments in talent development and see technology as the enabler of more opportunities for human resources to thrive. So IBPAP, in collaboration with our partner associations representing the various subsectors that comprise the Philippine IT BPM industry: animation, game development, contact center, global in-house center, healthcare information management, IT, and software. So we've all established a talent development framework where we aim to enable skills development and lifelong learning for our Filipino talent. We're focused on specific learning tracks. You'll see the 3 pillars here to the right side of your screen: the domain skills, or skills that are a specialized set based on existing and emerging job roles across the different subsectors; our digital skills that are based on the jobs of the future that may cut across several sectors; and of course, leadership skills for incumbent and aspiring leaders that can harness the power of human resources and take them through the digital age. We also want to focus on several different delivery channels as we develop these different learning tracks, depending on the nature and the requirement of skills training and delivery. And we also want to cater to different talent pools. So we've got our students, our employed practitioners, as well as career shifters. But at this point, it's important to underscore that the health crisis, as well as the subsequent containment and mitigation measures, also had a large impact on the demand for skills. According to a recent report by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, COVID-related lockdowns changed the nature of work and increased job postings that offered work from home arrangements. The transformation of the nature of work caused the emergence of future jobs, which require complexity, higher cognitive skills, and technical competencies. Demand for jobs requiring low levels of education reported a greater decline of 40% compared to jobs for high skilled workers, which only decreased by around 25%. Other than the technical capabilities, the industry also aims to build a workforce of continuous learners, and they will be characterized with an agile mindset that is talent with learnability, agility, and curiosity, leadership skills to work, collaborate, and steer people amid a volatile environment through problem solving, knowledge interaction, accountability, and impact, multifaceted teams, and digital savviness and readiness, which leverages on extracting the inherent benefits of digital transformation. This further emphasizes the need to develop digital leaders who are better equipped to handle the ambiguities brought about by digitalization and the pandemic. And so the future is hybrid. Global and local perception on the what's, whys, and how's of remote work was altered because of the pandemic. Before COVID-19, work from home was more like a luxury and an exception. But over the course of more than a year, maybe 20 months, it's become the driving force behind many organizations and their ability to remain operational despite many challenges. Global and local leaders are seeing work from home beyond its purpose as a business continuity plan or a BCP measure. And given the pivotal role of the Filipino talent in the sustained growth of the Philippine IT-BPM industry, stakeholders have rightfully embarked on a number of talent attraction and development initiatives to create an ecosystem that is sustainable, adaptable, and competitive. Our approach to the talent value chain focuses on 3 pillars. We've got talent attraction, where we want to strengthen industry awareness through promoting skills demand and career pathways to potential talent, the academe, and our industry stakeholders. For talent development, we want to build capability of our existing and potential talent for high value skills through pursuing scalable and sustainable upskilling and reskilling programs. And finally, the community. We want to harness experts and enablers in the industry and leverage initiatives to drive adoption and utilization of the various programs. As we move forward on these ongoing plans, we must keep in mind that there is a bigger picture to consider when it comes to the IT-BPM sector's continued relevance and competitiveness. In the recently concluded International Innovation Summit, the flagship event of the IT-BPM industry, IBPAP with their stakeholders in government, academe, and industry came together to design the Philippine IT-BPM industry's new points of contact. We have platforms to accelerate digital transformation and fuel the future of work, people of contact to upskill and future-proof the digital workforce, pillars to fortify the IT-BPM ecosystem, driving a multiplier effect around the country like no other, policies to identify government support that will lead to ease of doing business and economic progress, and places of contact to solidify country positioning and bring in investments to keep the Philippine IT-BPM industry flourishing. The impact of technology, digital transformation, the health crisis, these forces have placed the world in uncharted territory. So the key is for our human resources and the ecosystem that supports them to recognize that technology is an enabler. The resilience and resurgence of the IT-BPM industry is a testament to how we can harness the power of technology and merge it with a Filipino brand of service in order to deliver world-class and globally competitive support to our customers and our clients. We've been able to navigate relatively well for the most part, but much remains to be done to harness what opportunities we are able to pivot and get on that path of recovery and growth. With this, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Frankie. Indeed, investment in human resources is vital as we upskill and adapt with the digital transformation with emphasis on harmony among the key players of development ecosystem to strengthen the capability of our future workforce. Next up, we will underscore the importance of technological advancement and development of digital mechanisms to improve the workplace culture. To share more about this topic, we are joined by one of the experts of the International Labor Organization. He is an employment specialist and labor economist based in Jakarta. He has monitored the labor market trends and emerging policy issues throughout the Asia Pacific region and has advised high level policymakers and representatives of employers' associations and workers' organizations for more than 15 years. He has published widely on research topics that include working conditions in Asia's garment sector, the impact of ASEAN economic integration on skills demand, technology on future of jobs in ASEAN, and the impact of COVID-19 on labor markets and inequality. Let us put our hands together for Mr. Fu Huin, specialist on employment of the International Labor Organization.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and also thank you very much to the Department of Labor and Employment, the Bureau of Local Employment for this opportunity to be part of this important Congress. So this morning, next slide, please. So this morning, what I'd like to do is talk about 3 different emerging trends in digital work, specifically framed in the context of what we've seen in the last couple of years in terms of the COVID-19 crisis and our crisis recovery efforts. These digital trends, there are a lot of things that have been happening in the world of work, but I want to focus on 3 different areas. First being the rise of remote work or teleworking arrangements. Also want to touch on the emergence of new opportunities on the digital platforms. And then also talk about e-commerce and trends on online sales. Then I want to talk about the impacts that this has had on the shifting working arrangements and well-being in the workplace, as well as touching on the implications for being future ready in terms of skills and workforce development. And finally, touching on the priorities that we need to focus on to make sure that the Filipino workforce is ready for these changes and to be resilient in the future. Next slide, please. So first of all, I think it's really important for us to have a little bit of context in understanding what these changes have been and specifically how it's been accelerated by what's happened with COVID-19. So in the last couple of years, when we look at the impacts in the labor market, it's been quite widespread and it's been rather unprecedented. We've seen impacts in terms of working hour losses, employment losses, rising unemployment, underemployment, losses in incomes. And a lot of this has been driven by a lot of the different measures that have been required to control the spread of the pandemic. Lockdown measures, quarantines, these have limited operations for businesses and limited opportunities for work. The last couple of years, the ASEAN region saw working hour losses of around 8%. And you can see that last year alone, 2020, the Philippines recorded the highest losses of around 15% in working hours across the entire region. However, it's also important to note that even though there are differences across the region, there are also differences within each country as well. We've seen uneven impacts of the crisis. Women have been disproportionately impacted, as well as young people. We also have seen the disproportionate impacts on the informal sector, small and medium enterprises. And these specific groups need to be considered in particular in terms of the recovery process. Next slide, please. So that brings me to the first trend that I wanted to highlight, which is the rise of remote work and teleworking. This again has been accelerated by the crisis. This was a measure in which a lot of businesses invested in the software, the technology, the investments needed to allow remote working during the crisis, to allow workers to remain safe and be able to continue operations and be productive despite the ongoing pandemic. Now, there's a lot of emerging research to measure telework. And a lot of it is still being processed and thought through. But one thing that we're seeing is that there are a number of different types of occupations that are less specific to a locality. It doesn't require so much location-based use of machinery or equipment. It allows less requirements in terms of direct in-person contact in a specific locality. These jobs often include managers, professionals, associate professionals, clerical support workers. And if we look at that in what happened in 2020 in terms of the decreasing working hours, and we look across the entire country by region, we see that those people in these what we call high telework occupations or telework capable occupations, they also suffered working hour losses, but the declines were significantly lower than those in low telework occupations. In region 2, for example, region 8, we see that some of the working hour losses were 2 or nearly 3 times lower for those in these high telework occupations. Next slide, please. Also, certain sectors are more inclined towards telework, being telework capable, allowing remote work. These include service sector jobs such as information and communications, finance and insurance, business services, and public administration. We can see here when we look at productivity, these 4 sectors were quite resilient and the productivity remained quite robust. And a part of that storyline is attributable to teleworking and remote work arrangements. Next slide, please. Now I want to touch on the second digital trend that we've seen during this crisis, which is the emergence of the digital economy and opportunities that have exploded because of the crisis. In 2021, the Philippines' internet economy is estimated to have doubled to about 17 billion. This is driven predominantly by e-commerce, which has grown by 132%, as well as the rise of digital platform uses of transportation and food delivery. We've seen about 12 million new digital Filipino consumers since the start of the pandemic, and 68% of internet users made at least one online purchase. Increasingly, online merchants are using digital platforms to secure and source their suppliers, as well as to reach and connect to their consumers. So we see massive opportunities emerging in the internet economy in the Philippines. But it's also important to note that there's more opportunities awaiting. Currently, the Philippines, still relative to the rest of the Southeast Asia region, is relatively low in terms of online internet use for e-commerce. Next slide, please. Here again is reemphasize the importance of the digital platforms that have emerged. Worldwide, we've seen digital platforms increase almost 7-fold. These include different types of work and jobs that I want to highlight. First are the online web-based platform jobs. These are the ones in which workers go online, they bid for an assignment, and they're paid oftentimes for the completion of the assignment by an employer, oftentimes in a different locality. These online web-based jobs are very predominant in the Philippines, Philippines being one of the global leaders in terms of filling some of these type of jobs. In the Philippines, about half of these jobs are filled in the areas of software development, creative work, multimedia work, but another third are also in basic data entry, clerical support work. These online web-based jobs in the Philippines are predominantly driven by young people, and also women tend to migrate to these jobs more so than men. There's another dimension that's worth mentioning here as well, is the rise of, again, the digital platform-based, app-based, location-based taxi services such as Grab, delivery services such as Food Panda that have been absolutely critical for our operations and our functioning during this COVID crisis, especially during the lockdowns and quarantine period. Next slide, please. With these different arrangements that we're seeing, the shifting work arrangements, flexibility in work, remote work, the rise of digital platform work, we've seen now a shifting of jobs towards home-based work. In 2020 worldwide, we've seen a rise to about 560 million workers working from home. While this is a tremendous development, it's also something that has created new concerns in terms of workplace safety and health. There are now rising concerns about excessive working hours due to the blurring of work responsibilities and home life responsibilities. The daytime starts really early in the mornings for a lot of people, and they end very late at night. For platform workers, there are also periods of high intensity of work and volumes of work. And this makes us, forces us to re-examine this conventional idea that occupational safety and health has always been a responsibility of the employer with support of government to set the guidelines and the framework for that responsibility. But now with the workplace shifting towards the home, that responsibility or the ultimate responsibility now is falling more and more so on the worker to make sure that that is in place. Also, because of these work from home arrangements, we're seeing increasing concerns about social isolation, the effects of workers being isolated from their colleagues, and the mental risk, the mental support needed to support workers through this readjustment of the work-life balance. And of course, with the rise of platform workers, many of whom are predominantly considered own account workers, self-employed workers, we need to consider their well-being in the context of social protection measures and income insecurity. Next slide, please. Here, this is a global survey that was conducted of location-based platform taxi and delivery workers, a worldwide survey, and included workers in these platforms in the Philippines. And altogether, a stark majority, about 7 in 10, reported high levels of stress on the job. You can see that the leading factors are related to traffic congestion, but also related to workplace injury, time pressures to drive quickly, a lot of stress related to the conditions of their work that have been very, very intense during this period of COVID-19. Next slide, please. So in terms of the implications for the workforce going forward, I think that the crisis has made it very clear that there's an accelerated demand for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, these type of skills that are very critical. We've seen that increased demand, especially in advanced manufacturing, in ICT, in logistics. That demand is only increasing more and more, and we expect it to increase further in the future. There's also a refocus again on TVET, the importance of taking advantage of the digital opportunities to rethink how we deliver technical vocational education and training, how to make it more learner-centric, as well as how to strengthen the links to industry and to business. And again, the crisis and the emergence of skills demands have re-emphasized the importance of not only technical skills in terms of the digital, the software, the ICT, but also the soft skills that are increasingly important. Communication, interpersonal, social emotional skills. And of course, we cannot forget that in the Philippines, there are still significant gaps in terms of access to skills development, specifically for young people, women, those in the formal economy, those with lower levels of education. And this is oftentimes tied to geographical disparities. Certain regions, rural areas are oftentimes lacking the resources needed to close these gaps. Next slide, please. Here again, to focus on one aspect of the future demand for skills, this is a survey that was recently conducted looking at online Filipino merchants and their demand for digital skills over the next 5 years. And you can see widespread across the board, around 3/4 or more of these merchants have expressed a high increased usage or maintain the same level of usage for these different digital skills, such as digital marketing, digital analytics, website operations, software, cloud storage, and such. So the demand for digital skills is only increasing, and we expect that to be something that needs to be filled by the Filipino workforce. Last slide, please. So here I just wanted to close by highlighting some of the key areas that we should think about in terms of going forward, in terms of making sure that our digital workforce development takes an inclusive approach and one that's very supportive of the most vulnerable. And these are actually not my own ideas, but what I wanted to do here were highlight some of the key outputs that came out of the labor and business sectoral consultations that were held in advance of the job summit early this year as part of the National Employment Recovery Strategy process. First, the importance again of promoting digital and soft skills upgrading across the board for the workforce. Secondly, extremely important to expand access to market-driven TVET and STEM education. This is a big undertaking because it's talking about investments in terms of subsidizing training, making it accessible through digital means, making sure the linkages to industry and business are well in place to make sure that the skills that are being trained are relevant for industry. Third, the importance of fostering entrepreneurship, and specifically entrepreneurship with the mindset of taking advantage of the emerging opportunities of e-commerce and digitalization. Fourth, With the rise of the platform economy, growing number of workers on those platforms, we need to rethink our social protection systems to make them more inclusive, to make sure that the coverage is better, to make sure we're protecting the most vulnerable platform workers as well as informal workers. Of course, 5, absolutely critical to rethink occupational safety and health and mental health support. The crisis has made it so clear that work arrangements are becoming more and more flexible. The traditional models are not holding any longer, and we need to rethink how we approach occupational safety and health and making sure mental health support is more critical and a more integral part of that process. And finally, the last point is about something that is always critical, and it's something that is the only way forward really, is to deepen social dialogue, strengthening the role of workers and employers organizations in terms of the policy process, and making sure that the voice of people in the informal economy, the platform economy are heard, and that their rights are protected. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fu, for that rich and informative sharing. The pandemic has truly changed the labor market landscape, affecting the overall well being of employees, thus changing the demands in skills and workforce development. With the changes brought about by the pandemic, workplace dynamics likewise changed, thus creating challenges on the harmony among co workers and the gap between the management and its employees. Our third speaker will talk about employee leadership synergy in the hybrid work model. He is the head of human resources of Globe Telecom. Joining the organization in 2010, he has over 30 years of experience in general management and leveraging leading edge technologies, processes, and human capital for competitive advantage. A seasoned HR practitioner with more than 20 years of experience in multifunctional HR practice areas, he also held very significant positions in Procter& Gamble Philippines and Procter& Gamble Asia. Prior to joining Globe, he was the president of IBM Business Services. A Bachelor of Science degree holder in Mechanical Engineering from the University of the Philippines, let us give a warm welcome to Mr. Renato M. Giao.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for inviting me here to share with you our Globe story during the pandemic. First, allow me to briefly take you back in time. Around January or February of last year, when news of COVID-19 spreading in other countries broke out, we acted with agility in HR as we made preparations on how we should handle the situation. Personally, I would like to believe that this sense of urgency was what made the difference as we strive to keep the lights on for our customers. HR was instrumental in ensuring the business continuity during the pandemic. Among the things we made sure was that our critical skeletal workforce were deployed to address the connectivity needs of our customers. The rest and the majority of our workforce were then quickly shifted to a work-from-home setup, with many of our third-party operators under limited capacity. We also had to be nimble in our workforce deployment. So we rolled out Sagot Kita, a conscript and ambassadorship program where many of our work-from-home employees signed up to provide customer support for our subscribers. The safety and protection of our people is our topmost priority. Hence, for our CSF, who physically report for work at the Globe offices and on sites, we ensured the provision of private service vehicles on top of ensuring that they have the PPEs and masks. We likewise also provided free testing and complementary vitamins were distributed to them. For our work-from-home employees, their productivity and wellness is also top of mind. Hence, we rolled out programs such as meeting guidelines, Thursdays by the desk, Hope Chat, and many, many more that help our employees manage and balance their work-from-home life situations. Learning needed to pivot as well from a brick and mortar approach towards virtual digital formats. We invested heavily on online learning programs that will allow our employees to reskill and upskill themselves remotely. However, we saw and knew that these were not enough. We needed to be able to accelerate our response time, as well as being proactive in protecting our own bubble, as well as the very own bubbles of our own people in their own homes. We then decided to build our own RT-PCR laboratory in partnership with Healthway to be able to get test results within 24 hours and support our employees. We likewise increased our ambulance services for emergency response to our employees. We invested on what our employee patients usually ask for, like oxygen tanks, transportation, and even the hard-to-find medicines. More importantly, we took advantage of and partnered with AC Health through the Ayala Vaccination and Immunization Program, or AVIP, to be able to protect our people, their dependents, and household members, and also our vendor partners. To date, with the help of the LGUs as well as AVIP, we have now vaccinated 99.1% of our employees and have likewise covered 79% of our employees' enrolled dependents. So what has the pandemic taught us? It has reminded us of our core, that at the core of everything we do is our people. The pandemic may have painted a more uncertain future, but everything that we did for our people were anchored on this. We were guided by our own purpose and made sure that every program and initiative had our signature, Alagang Globe. As we move into recovery and face a new normal, we will continue to uplift our people and keep them engaged and productive by focusing on three key imperatives. First, we will challenge the way we see our employees by putting greater emphasis on the unique needs of our employees, thus making our programs more relevant and fitting for our employees' individual needs. Second, we will refresh our value proposition, not just to attract potential employees, but more importantly, to retain our current base of employees. And lastly, we will build a future-ready workforce and ensure our people will be successful in the hybrid setup, which is the new normal. This pandemic has disrupted the way we work. Along with that disruption is an opportunity to reimagine everything about how we do our jobs and how we run our organizations. In Globe, we are starting to rethink our talent practices and working arrangements. Underpinning these efforts is the shift to the way we view our employees. For many of our people, the topmost priority, while the pandemic still persists, is the safety and wellness, as well as that of their families. Hence, top-notch healthcare through a Globe-led direct partnership model is one of the things we're planning for our workforce. We are also thinking of tweaking many of our basic programs to adjust to the diverse and unique needs of our people. This is offering personalized benefits through a full flex benefits program, like stock options for tenured employees, or hot skills bonuses, or flexibility to suit our people's personal circumstances, like split shifts for parents with small children that need to be assisted during online schooling. We already expect that the hybrid work environment is here to stay. Hence, the challenge for us in Globe is how to facilitate collaboration, build relationships, solve complex challenges, and generate new ideas under a remote setup. We recognize that empowering our leaders and people managers is key. We need leaders who can motivate and inspire, one who practices empathy, mindfulness, and compassion while still driving productivity. From the perspective of our employees, this continuous remote work potentially extends their workday. It diffuses the work-life balance and reduces mental well-being. Hence, we likewise also need to continuously equip them to make decisions that balances their productivity and personal time. Second key imperative for us in Globe is to revisit and reinvent our employee value proposition to ensure that it remains relevant to our own people. Beyond just being a campaign, we intend to refresh our existing people programs, our policies, and philosophies to renew our commitment to our people. Our refreshed P will have 4 key main elements, namely competitive and differentiated rewards, multifaceted careers, holistic well-being, and shared purpose. All businesses around the world have been impacted by the Great Resignation phenomenon. This is also true in Globe, where we currently see an uptick in our attrition rates. First order of business is to ensure that our pay and rewards remain competitive with the market through salary adjustments and creative incentive programs. Second, we will ensure that career and development opportunities abound within our organization by leveraging our larger ecosystem through our subs and rotating our people so that they can attain professional success and career advancement. Third, we will continue to promote our people's well-being through programs that not only address physical wellness, but nurtures their mental, emotional, and financial well-being. And last element of our EVP is the shared purpose. Globe is a purpose-driven company. And what better way to foster a deeper connection with our people by embarking on a mission with them to improve the lives of our countrymen through digitalization. Lastly, even as we deal with the challenges today, we will continue to put in place plans for a post-pandemic recovery. The transformation of our talent models and digitization of our talent value chains continue to be the biggest focus area that we have today. As businesses, including ourselves in telecommunications, deliver new business models in the post-pandemic era, we need to reskill and upskill our workforce. On top of accelerating cognitive and functional learning through leveraging digital technologies, we will need to invest heavily on developing our employees' social and emotional skills, such as adaptability and resilience, which became more critical during and post the pandemic. And beyond formal training, skills accelerator strategies such as learning in the flow of work, peer and community learning are some of the learning innovations that we are currently exploring. We also recognize that there is a huge opportunity to tap particular skill sets from the gig economy. Since we are also looking at how we can take advantage of this new work model to fill skill gaps in our organization today. Lastly, but not least, even before the pandemic has started, we have embarked on a journey to transform and digitize our employee journey. We will continue to invest in next generation technologies and digital solutions that drive self-service and digital-first mindset. It is our mission to deliver a wonderful and seamless experience at every employee touchpoint. Because in Globe, we believe that it is only when we can take care of our employees that they can take care of our customers and others. While the pandemic brought us many uncertainties, our Tatak Alagang Globe remains. Our commitment is to be by our employees' side. We are there for them so that they can be there for others too. Yan ang Tatak Alagang Globe. Thank you very much and good afternoon.
One day, we woke up and everything we loved about coming to work was gone. The connections. Kumusta, Hans? Things we used to take for granted are now the best memories of being a Kaglobe. But if there is one thing we are known for, it's our ability to bounce back, regain control, and fight for what we love. This is a battle you won't have to face alone. And we'll be with you every step of the way. Every day we choose to fight back is a day closer to victory. We start with day one and end with taking back our lives. Dahil sa huli, atin ang alaga. Atin ang tagumpay. Atin ang pagbabago. Alagang Globe, atin ang mundo.
Thank you, Mr. Zhao. Employee welfare in the hybrid workplace has to be one of the focus of organizations in recovering from the pandemic and meeting the demands of the new normal. Once again, thank you very much to our speakers for generously sharing their expertise with us. But before we proceed to the next part of the program, which is the panel discussion, let us first have a quick health and comfort break. Time check, it's now 9:52. Let's be back by 9:57. tuned in to the second installment of the 5th National Career Advocacy Congress webinar series. Let me remind our participants that the certificates of participation will be given after you have accomplished the post-activity evaluation later at the end of the program. At this point, we will have the panel discussion where we will address pertinent questions relative to the topics discussed a while ago. We will also engage with our participants in Zoom and Facebook Live as we pick questions in the chat box and comments section. It is my honor to welcome and introduce to you one of the officials of the Department of Labor and Employment. Our moderator for today's webinar holds a master's degree in development economics from the University of the Philippines School of Economics. She is currently the Deputy Executive Director of the National Wages and Productivity Commission for Technical and Management Support Services. A warm applause to Deputy Executive Director Jeanette T. Damo. Hi, Ms. Ching. The virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, Jessica. Good morning, everyone. Before anything else, shout out to our participants and audience out there. Indeed, today's webinar theme is very apt, very interesting, and very timely. As we have learned a while ago from our experts, employee engagement plays a very crucial role in ensuring not only business continuity, but also in unlocking workers' productivity. Okay, so at this juncture, we will be joined by experts from one of our development partners, as well as from the academy. Starting off with an economist who leads the Asian Development Bank's projects and programs in the areas of education, skills development, social protection, and jobs. Prior to joining ADB operation in Southeast Asia, he was with the macroeconomic division of the research department. His research interest is spread across areas of technology and its impact on employment, innovation and structural transformation, industrial policy, enterprise dynamics, and impact of COVID-19 pandemic on labor market. Before joining the ADB in 2017, he spent close to 10 years at the International Labor Organization in Geneva and Bangkok. He holds a PhD in economics from the Graduate Institute of International and Development Studies in Geneva and has a master's degree in public policy from Harvard University. Everyone, let us all welcome Mr. Samir Katiwada. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I didn't expect you to be giving an introduction like that. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Many thanks to Department of Labor and Employment for inviting ADB to this conversation. As you all know, and you heard this morning already at the top of the hour, that this crisis, COVID-19, has been a crisis like no other. You heard from my dear friend Fu at the ILO that there has been a huge impact in the labor market in this country, not just in terms of hours reduced for workers who are still employed, but also many workers who have been laid off because of the pandemic, and many of us who have been working from home for now second year running. So if you look at what has happened to the workplace, this is a massive readjustment. So what this does is it gives us an opportunity for us to reinvent, not just workers, but also employers, organizations, large and small. It applies to everyone. And it's great to hear from Frankie from IBPAP and also Renato from Globe that what is being done at the private sector level is very encouraging to see that we have we are trying to navigate the crisis. You know, just to talk about IT BPO, this is a sector that I really follow very closely. When you look at early 2000s, late 1990s, early 2000, this really grew out of absolutely nothing. There was no IT BPO when we go back to late 1990s. A very small fraction in terms of the revenue, number of people employed, what it contributed to the Philippine economy. And look at this now, we are in 2021 November, and you saw the numbers that Frankie presented. The contribution that IT BPO makes to this country is enormous. But can we think ahead another 20 years, another 30 years? or another 80 years until the turn of the next century? What will this look like? What will the services look like? Right? I want to give you an example from the US. When you look at the US from early 1900s, 42% of workers were in agriculture. By the time we got to early 2000, about 2% of workers were in agriculture. So from 42 to 2%, there was a massive transformation that took place in that 100 years. When you look at where workers went, what type of jobs were created in manufacturing, and then later on in high value services. So there was a massive transformation that took place. And in the Philippines, we can also envision something like that looking ahead, right? But we have to take this opportunity that we have with us and actually make it happen. And you know, the thing is, some of the things that we heard from Fu in terms of what needs to be done, you know, in terms of skills development, training, employee engagement in the workplace, all of these things, we know the solutions, right? So now, when you look at our education levels in terms of, take the example of the school closures that have been out with us for about 1.5 years. And recently ADB came out with a study, and it's actually, there's an updated version that's coming out from our research department that shows that because of school closures, there's learning losses among students. They have not been in school. So by the time they go back to school, there's a massive learning loss. And then that will lead to an earnings loss later on in life. How do we tackle this? What is the policy solution? For employers, my question to you is, you know, that we talk about training, we talk about, you know, providing employees with the right set of skills to really thrive in their workplace. You'll have to double that, triple that, looking ahead 20 years, because the kids who have been in school now, or who've been out of school now, will enter the workplace in 20 years. How do we make sure that those kids are prepared for the type of work, type of skill, the changing demand of labor that we will be seeing in the 20 years time? So that's what we have to plan for, because now you might have a 3-week training for workers. You might have to rethink that. Maybe there'll have to be a training every year for workers to actually reinvent themselves. So this is something that we have to keep in mind looking ahead. And lastly, I just wanted to, is my time up? Looks like my time is up, but I wanted to kind of.
I think, Mr. Katiwado, we will have a time for that later on.
No, can I add one more thing before I give it over to you? I just wanted to kind of say that, you know, ADB is involved in a couple of areas that was, you know, sort of indicated as where we should work. And in the Philippines, we're working on TVET, and also in terms of basic education, we're also working in that area as well. So we're really involved in that sector precisely because we see the importance of skills development for the future of work. Over to you. I'm sorry I took a bit more time than I should have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we need the whole day for this webinar, because this topic is really very interesting. Anyway, we will proceed to the discussion, the main discussion later on. Then now I will introduce our next panelist. Okay, our next panelist is an experienced career services professional who has worked in Asia over the past 16 years. She rejoined the Asian Institute of Management in September 2020 as Career Services Director, after being based overseas cumulatively for 4 years at the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore, where she worked as Assistant Director. She also served at the Asian University for Women in Bangladesh as Head of Career Development and International Programs, including Alumni Relations. She has also spent over 5 years in international human resources and operations for multinational organizations. She studied industrial relations from the University of the Philippines and psychology from De La Salle University. She also earned professional certifications in management from AIM School of Executive Education and Lifelong Learning, and in Women in Education Leadership from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Let us all welcome Ms. Lucille Jade Galvan. Ms. Lucille.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jing. Thank you for that kind introduction. And it's a pleasure to be amongst everybody this morning. It's also my pleasure to kind of represent the Asian Institute of Management and share that perspective on the education sector as to how we are trying to cope during this past couple of years in the pandemic, and what we're trying to do also moving forward. Our role in the Career Services Office as a centralized unit in the Institute is mainly serving the schools of business, technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship, as well as development, which includes disaster risk management, now among the programs at the Institute. And we are here basically also to help increase this future readiness of talents to serve in the communities, in the society, and the world of work at large. So thank you very much for having me this morning as well.
Okay, so to start the ball rolling, may I also invite our earlier speakers, Ms. Frankie, Mr. Win, and Mr. Zhao to join our panel. Thank you. Actually, we have prepared a few questions revolving on the topics we covered today for you to share your insights. Anyone from the panel can respond and address the queries of at hand, after which we will choose questions from the Zoom and Facebook Live participants, which you may respond to as well. Okay, now for the first question. Okay. Nearly 2 years into the pandemic, the world has shifted its focus on recovery as the economic effects of lockdown surface. In a country like the Philippines, where major gaps in infrastructure, access to ICT, and digital literacy have rendered a significant segment of the population unable to cope with the transforming workplace, the question is, what role do career advocates and registered guidance counselors play in employment recovery? Okay, we'll start with the ladies first. Okay, Ms. Jade.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we do, especially in career professions. Career professionals will be kind of more in demand in terms of providing career assistance in the changing careers and updating of skills of individuals. So basically in helping, let's say, in job search strategies, we know that technology is already there as an enabler. And people are actually having a more active role in their career progress, since the internet already provides a rich source of career and job information that is accessible to almost everyone. But that also means that career counselors or career professionals' roles would also adapt. And as a primary role, we would necessarily have to be that conduit between that information and the people who need that information. And in our case are students and graduating students and maybe recent alumni. So there are those platforms and programs available, but that information may not necessarily be in the awareness yet of those individuals. So it's our role to actually be able to connect them and network these professionals, and at the same time have that technologically enabled collaboration that actually strengthens the capacity of learners to acquire the skills necessary, as we say, for them to be able to get into that next role, job, or opportunity that's at hand.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jade. Ms. Frankie.
Thanks, Director Jing, and good day to everybody. We really are very thankful that the IT and Business Process Association of the Philippines has been invited to this conversation. So one of the areas that we really prioritize within the IT BPM industry is the talent value chain. And there's so many things that you can do within that entire ecosystem. So what we want to do is to also streamline the activities that we have around ensuring that we can cover the talent ecosystem. So in particular, talent attraction and talent development are two key pillars that we focus on within IT BPM. So talent attraction, because what we have found is that rather than kind of pushing information to candidates, there's really a whole set of opportunities that have been made available, but there is also too much information, lack of information versus too much information about what career opportunities are out there. And so we want to make sure that there exists a bridge between ensuring that there's accurate information that gets to the candidates about what sectors are available out there for them to start skilling themselves towards, and what are some of the skills that are also important so that they can succeed in these various roles. So rather than kind of pushing that information, we want to be able to pull the candidate and attract them into taking a closer look at particularly the IT BPM sector. So apologies, I am going to be very biased about that. But there is also value in taking a look at different sectors that are available, career functions, job roles that are, I think it was mentioned earlier, 20, 30 years into the future. There is a lot of conversation around automation, robots replacing humans. And I think that's one of the responsibilities, almost obligations of our career advocates or guidance counselors to ensure that there's no need to panic, because it is an evolution, it's a transformation of roles, and there's place for everybody, particularly within the IT BPM sector. So it's really not so much or over and above ensuring that we have a good knowledge of what the skills and competencies are needed in particular roles. It's also being able to talk about certain industries, verticals, sectors that our future and potential talent can enter into. So that's one of or two of the things that we really need to focus on as advocates of careers.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Frankie. Mr. Samir?
Thank you. No, I was just thinking about, listening to Frankie. When we look at the way folks get jobs in the Philippines, we were just talking to Asik Nikki the other day. When you look at the contribution that PESOs make, the public employment service offices, it's about 8% of people who find jobs are finding them through PESOs. And now we've got the barangay level as well. And, a lot of the people actually find jobs sort of, by talking to friends or even going to the employer directly. And, at the end of the day, if we really sort of strengthen PESOs and institutionalize many of these PESOs, I think they will make a difference in terms of helping folks find jobs. That's one. The other one is, making use of the labor market information system. They have the online system that, folks at DOLE, of course, know about this very well. And that, also works well in terms of helping workers find jobs, the types of jobs that are demanded in the labor market. And I think to answer to your question, for guidance counselors, being sort of connected to up-to-date labor market information system is actually critical, because that's what helps you in terms of really providing the type of guidance that would be workers, job seekers would actually need. And looking at the changing demand for labor, you see that the presentation from the ILO, you can see that actually the labor market is shifting. So we need to keep up with that, and we need to also have the LMIS linked to skills diagnostics, some kind of labor demand diagnostics that gives you a sense of what type of jobs are in demand. And one thing that really helps in terms of getting people into the types of training that we would like them to get, especially in TVET, is to advertise the salary scale of different types of work. And this makes an enormous difference. If you look at TVET training provided by TESDA, there is about 90% of TVET training institutions are private, 10% are public, right? But when you look at the number of TVET students in this country, half of them actually are enrolled in the public institutions. The public institutions are stretched. But as it turns out, the public institutions are supporting the low income, the most vulnerable, disadvantaged groups. And so how do we strengthen TESDA's role? How do we strengthen publicly provided training is critical. And their guidance counselors, of course, play an important role in landing TVET graduates into the right types of jobs. I'll leave it at that. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Samir. Mr. Fu?
Yes, thank you for the question. I think it's a very important one, and just want to appreciate what Samir had shared, and I think I want to just touch on that a little bit further. My sense of it is that going forward, career counselors, career guidance professionals, their work is going to be even more and more important, and the value of their services is going to be incredibly important going forward. We talk a lot about COVID-19 and the crisis right now, but it goes beyond that. Going forward, we're talking about automation, we're talking about digitalization of the workplace, but there are other factors such as green jobs, new opportunities in terms of sustainable sustainable economies, sustainable jobs, etc. So there are a lot of opportunities out there, and it's really important for, as Samir alluded to, for career counselors to also be abreast of all these trends and know what the dynamics are coming down the pipeline in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. So they're ready to and able to frame the opportunities for their students, for their clientele in a way that they can be prepared for the future. And just to go a little deeper into the labor market information, I couldn't agree about this more. I mean, this is going to be absolutely critical. We see a lot of the importance of knowing where the demands are in terms of occupations, in terms of different sectors. Samir also raised a really important aspect about wages, making sure that that's very clear in terms of the benefits of going down a specific type of career track as well. And I think this is going to be really important for career counselors to be able to tap into labor market information, guide their clients, their students, towards those services where they can find this kind of information that will really help them make decisions that can really direct them in the right path for their career opportunities. But also keeping in mind that it is about inclusion as well. I mean, I think that it's very clear there's disparities within the labor market. There are certain young people who are missing out on a lot of the opportunities. Oftentimes young women in the Philippines, lower labor force participation. A lot of that has to do with the imbalance in terms of domestic care responsibilities. And so how do we think about tapping into whatever means we have now and the new opportunities we have from digital resources to reach out to these marginalized groups, to get them the career information, the labor market information, the career guidance they need to make those decisions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fu. And now, Sir Rene, Alagang Globe.
Oh, thank you. But first, the pandemic or the new normal really showed us many, many ways that businesses can truly adapt. And this came with new opportunities and a shift in our traditional job roles, especially with emphasis on remote or online work. I believe guidance counselors and career advocates have a very important role in preparing our job seekers, mostly on skills and competencies that they need to learn or relearn, or most probably even unlearn in the context of the new normal. With the acceleration of digitalization, that is likely to continue even during the post-pandemic. And the evolution of our jobs will likely be accelerated as well. Hence, upskilling and reskilling will need to keep pace with the rapidly changing skill needs as a result of digitalization. And among these will be the top agenda of many, many HR professionals and career counselors. Now, Filipino workers are very, very talented, and they need to be more motivated, though, to look for continuous learning, to drive and accumulate more skills that we can anticipate that the businesses will need in the future. But they need to be supported with learning opportunities and experiences that go beyond their roles today. Career advocates and guidance counselors can help by connecting Filipino workers to cross-organizational or extra-organizational skills building opportunities. And let me give you a practical example. At the start of the pandemic, a lot of our contact center providers had to shut down because of the lockdown. But imagine how should we be able to serve the 80 million subscribers that Globe had when they had to call in and request for answers to questions or submit complaints. We didn't have enough people to be able to respond to those queries. So what we did was to create a program called Sagot Kita. During that time, when we closed down most of our stores in the malls, these people also didn't have any jobs. They were all relegated at home. But these people also had the knowledge, not necessarily the skill to respond to queries, but they have the knowledge about the products and services of Globe. So what we did was to reskill them, told them how to respond to queries, told them how to be more empathetic, told them how to respond quickly and address the issues and concerns. And during those 3 to 6 months that our contact centers were trying to set up their home offices, we were able to serve the needs of our company by upskilling and reskilling our own people that had to be displaced because of the lockdown. Second item, I think, and maybe if we can take a look at a different point of view in here, The career counselors likewise also have a very important role today. And I don't know whether this is happening to your companies today, but around the world today, we're experiencing what we call the Great Resignation, or some consultants would rather say the Great Reshuffle. And this is mainly because a lot of our people likewise also are looking for changes, looking for opportunities to say, is this really the job that I'd like to be able to do? And most of these people are looking for ways for them to be able to meet the specific personal goals versus what their professional goals look like. I would rather that if we can have more of our career advocates and guidance counselors to help them in discerning what's the right thing for them to be able to do and plan out, so that then we can ensure that they are focusing on the right career pathways that they need to check, and most importantly, likewise, also provide them with the guidance of what new skills and competencies that they need to build. Lastly, talk about offshoring, and this is a practical example. We're also losing some of our people today. For them to start working, not necessarily moving to other companies or to other countries, but they can do work from where they are today, even if they're in the provinces, to even multinational companies around the world. The pandemic has taught us that work can be done remotely. So these companies are now able to poach on people in countries like us, in the Philippines today, especially in the tech field, and they can provide technical skills and capabilities. So guidance counselors, take a look at that opportunity also. The gig economy, the platform is really expanding very, very well across the globe. And we should be able to find opportunities for our own people here in the Philippines to be able to address those.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think having a very efficient, effective labor market information system will really spell a difference in providing the right employment opportunities to our labor force and in addressing actually our perennial problem of unemployment and underemployment. And PESO managers, as mentioned by Mr. Samir, and our career guidance advocates play a very important role in really regulating our labor market system's operation. Okay, for the next question. Actually, our secretariat prepared a number of questions, but the time given to us is very short now. So the second question is, a recent study from the International Labor Organization has revealed that the Philippines, among the Southeast Asian countries, suffered from the highest working hour losses during the pandemic. While employment is slowly returning to the pre-pandemic levels, underemployment statistics shows that jobs created are of lower quality. How have your respective organizations dealt with this issue, and how can other companies improve job quality, recover working hours, and increase worker productivity during this time? Siguro gentlemen muna ngayon, ha? Okay, we'll start with Mr. Pu.
Thank you again for this question. And indeed, we've seen the widespread impact of the crisis, and in terms of what's happened in the ASEAN, the Philippines has been really hard hit. A lot of that had to do with the very restrictive measures during the pandemic to control the spread of the virus, the quarantines, the lockdowns, and such. At the time, it's really a challenge that we're facing, in every country around the world. I mean, everyone's going through this crisis together, and it's a very challenging time. But part of it is also thinking about how we can use the opportunity again to really ramp up our efforts to get the workforce ready to reboot and get things going once the economy is ready to pick up again. Part of that is related to skills training, focusing on STEM education, reaching out for our efforts to look at young women in particular. How do we get them into that track? How do we break down the barriers to that have been preventing them from going down that road to look into the opportunities for technology and digital skills development? These have been really critical. Also, it's also important for us to look at the linkages with industry. I mean, I think the comments shared by Mr. Zhao and Frankie really made it clear that the industry and the demands for different skills need to really be tied into what we're focusing on with the technical training, with the vocational training, and the STEM education. So we're trying to tie this together, trying to focus on these different areas in terms of our program work. And then also, of course, focusing on access again to geographically disadvantaged regions, rural areas, young youth and young people in those areas that have been marginalized in the past. And we're trying to really reach out and make sure that they're the ones who are going to benefit from the recovery process. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Sir Rene?
You know, the companies that really thrive and survive the lockdown are those that invested heavily in turning digital, mostly in their processes and their systems, and most importantly, in their people's skills. I believe the Globe was able to continue to deliver its services to its almost 80 million subscribers, even during the lockdown, because of this. And let me give you an example. When we moved from our old offices in Mandaluyong to BGC, our CEO had the foresight where he said, mandated that we will no longer be issuing desktops or landline phones. Everyone gets a laptop, he says. Whereas previously, us within HR, for example, would say, well, laptops were previously seen as perks given only to senior leaders. He had the foresight that, hey, these are merely tools that can help our employees to become even more productive. And as a result of that, we likewise also started looking at business processes also. Not just tools, the process themselves. We had to eliminate paper forms. We had to make sure that the processes were so efficient and leverage on automation. Can you just imagine if during the lockdown, if we had to get wet signatures for all documents and contracts, can you imagine how much more work that needed to be done? So we converted all of these manual processes and automated all of these. But most importantly, I guess it's really the conversion of all of our people's skills and competencies from very manual work to purely strategic knowledge-based workers today. And that has in fact allowed us to provide new roles or new jobs for our people, even if some of these roles were being eliminated. We were able to retrain them, give them new skills and capabilities so that then they can now start developing better processes because they knew how the process worked previously, and we gave them digital skills. They were able to convert all of these capabilities to become more efficient. In the end, I think what we've been able to see was that turning into new digital skills will provide opportunities for our people to be able to find more opportunities for them to be able to get better roles, better productivity. Now, for us, we've likewise also gone beyond training. We likewise also started role rotation for all of our people, for them to start now understanding that, hey, they have more capabilities beyond what they're doing today. And we had to be able, likewise, also to convert most of our brick and mortar training programs into online training so that then everyone within the organization had the capability to be able to understand how they can better develop their skills and capabilities. Now, building more roles is dependent on, likewise, also the business being able to survive. So the ability to be able to create more innovative products and services becomes very important. So I will leave with one other item that needs to be important. As we now start evolving our new businesses today, innovation and creativity becomes a very important skill and competency among the people. So again, this is very, very important, especially in as we move towards the ICT or tech world today. We need to start being more creative, being more innovative. And this is where I think we need more skills coming from the Filipino workers today.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Samir.
Thank you, Director Damo. You know, you heard about the COVID-19's impact and the reason why we saw a massive impact in terms of reduced working hours. I think Fu rightly pointed out that the stringency of lockdown, played a key role. And the stringency of lockdown last year, March, April, May, was, as you all remember, it was very strict, and that didn't allow for reallocation of labor. Usually when there's a crisis, there's a reallocation of workers from, say, when they lose their job in manufacturing or higher paying services, and they go to provinces, but they couldn't really do that at the beginning because the lockdown was so strict. Second half of 2020, the lockdown was less strict, and you saw a bit of labor reallocation, and that's, I think, mainly why it explains the impact. When we think, I think it's great to hear that Globe has sort of made changes to its business process in terms of adjusting to the new reality. I think before the pandemic, when we talked about automation, when we talk about labor saving technology, it was mostly focused on cost savings, right? As IB PAP would know this very well. It's about, like, how do we save on cost? How do you use the recent technology? It was all about that. But what the pandemic did was that now it became about public health, because it's hard to gather under one roof, many people together. So now the push towards automation also came from public health concerns. And that's what I think, in an organic kind of way, it's expediting the process of automation. Especially we see this in services. If you look at retail services, before, you wouldn't imagine getting, when you go to a restaurant, ordering on an iPad, but now you might have to do that because to avoid interaction with other people, or to minimize the interactions with other folks. So this, in a way, it's organically happening. And what it points to, I think at the end of the day, is investing in ICT and investing in technology, bridging the digital divide. All of that is critical. So our ICT infrastructure. But the other one is human capital development, basically digital skills. Digital skills, I think digital skills is going to be critical, not just for IBPAP and ITBPO and Globe employees, but also everywhere, for teachers, for TVED trainers, for folks who work at DOLE, and people like us who work in international organizations. So digital skills is critical, right? So I think this is an area we really need to rethink education. How do we make this a central part of our education, starting from very early age? Because as you saw with remote learning with our kids, we were all kind of lost at the beginning with Zoom and with headphones, and see, it really, it was a huge transition that we had to make. And I feel sorry for the teachers who all of a sudden, no matter what you taught social science, you taught language, but now you have to do it over the computer. So again, it points to a direction that digital skills is central to any skills development efforts that we have. So we need to really make a push towards that while we make investments in ICT infrastructure and ICT development. Over to you, Director Damo.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Samir. Ms. Jade.
Yes, so we need to select the right tools to improve productivity. And since personal and environmental matters also can impact individuals' functioning, having a very positive and meaningful relationship also with colleagues, aside from management, for instance, and others, give individuals a sense of achievement continually in their work life, despite the struggles. So at the Institute, in terms of technology, there had been digital skills trainings and champions. Communication is supported more so, and it became more frequent as well, communication among members. AIM also adjusted processes. As earlier mentioned, staff submitted monthly accomplishment reports in view of daily attendance monitoring, for instance. And HROD closely works with line managers in reviewing job redesign or organizational culture through the likes of team strengthening exercises. So these help in maintaining the work culture and the norms, what's acceptable, what's not, within the nuances of the home office at the moment, and perhaps sooner than later in the transition. Well, and different levels of that sense, which forms, you could also say, the differences in sizes of teams, locations of team members, all these form part of those factors. So perhaps creating clear paths for career progression among staff, access and their capability to do flexible working as a choice, improving the capabilities also of the people on the front lines, and reviewing the job redesign, organizational culture, and championing health and mental health in the workplace.
Okay, thank you. Miss Frankie.
Thanks, Director Jing. I remember before the pandemic happened, when we would have conversations in sessions such as this one, we had to spend a little bit more time talking about digital transformation and really just making sure that our audience is able to wrap their head around what we're talking about in the IT/BPM industry, that we really have to prepare for digitalization, automation, and the acceleration of our various tools and practices that support that. So it is unfortunate, absolutely unfortunate, that during the pandemic, we did get to experience it for ourselves, the Philippines, right? So one of the key features of IT/BPM is most of our clients are offshore. So we get to hear about whatever digital applications and tools and practices, processes that our clients have in order to serve their customers. But really, from the Filipino perspective, we don't necessarily have firsthand live experience of some of those things. So that was one interesting takeaway that we had during the pandemic, that the Philippines has, truly, we've been thrust in a situation where we had to adapt very quickly. And with partners in the infrastructure, and particularly the telco industry, we're happy that we are enabled by these types of services within the IT/BPM industry. But really, it was, I guess, the one positive that we're getting out of the pandemic is that we can kind of cut to the chase in terms of setting the context around digital transformation, because it is now really prevalent around us in the Philippine setting. And one of the key things that we've also been very thankful for within the IT/BPM industry is being considered an essential sector by the government. So we're very, very fortunate to have been considered an essential sector. We can continue to operate, depending on the levels of quarantine or lockdown, whatever percentage that may be on site. But there's also a large number of us that would continue to operate and perform the jobs at home. Once again, there is an infrastructure component to that, and this is kind of over and above maybe Renee's, specifically singling out Globe, right? It's really this entire infrastructure that the country needs to focus on, because really, when we talk about underemployment, it is something that we recognize within the Philippine labor market. But the IT/BPM sector is actually, and many other sectors are going through a war on talent. There's so much demand out there in terms of services, in terms of jobs, and we've got a really healthy labor pool within the Philippines. But aside from skills and competencies, there's also the enablement and the access factor, driven by geographies, the availability of internet connectivity, and a lot of those factors that we need to consider. And at the same time, I think it was mentioned earlier, the great resignation or the great reshuffle. Our perspective in the industry is that the resignation is not happening just in the Philippines, or the kind of moving from one company to another, but the impact of our clients whose labor force are also going through that kind of experience. You have got an aging population, particularly in the North American regions. And there are also labor participants in Europe, in North America, that are rethinking their own careers. And so who's going to do the job that they're going to leave behind? They are looking to countries, to regions with a healthy population in order to pick up that slack. And so we now need to really match that up, because we don't want to end up being just warm bodies. The jobs are out there. The career is really waiting for us to take advantage of it. But if we don't have the kind of skills, if we don't have the kind of infrastructure that can support that, we will just have warm bodies, apologies for the term, but we don't really have skilled and qualified workers. And so that's really one of the things that we want to focus on within the IT BPM industry is how do we kind of bridge that gap? There's so many gaps that we need to bridge now. And more than ever, aside from the digital transformation, aside from the health crisis, it's really something that we need to focus on. Just one last point for me, I love hearing how the panel here is talking about digital skills. I also wanted to add a few more kind of learning tracks or skill sets that we need to focus on, particularly for the IT BPM industry. There's domain skills as well. Aside from ensuring that we have digital literacy and fluency, the IT BPM industry is made up of different subsegments or subsectors, as we call them. And I hope that our career advocates here this morning have a bit of an idea what those are. So there's animation, there's game development, there's global in-house centers or your shared services or captives, healthcare information management system, IT and software services, and of course the contact centers or the BPOs. Most people will see IT BPM as equivalent to just that one subsegment. Definitely the largest segment that we have within IT BPM, but really there's a host of other domains, other specific specialized areas of expertise within the IT BPM industry. So there are these factors that we need to solve for. Underemployment, at least in the Philippine setting, is going to be driven by just how much we are able to intervene kind of as a full body here, rather than lack of people, lack of warm bodies who will enter the workforce very soon.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Frankie. I think our audience should really have their pens and paper with them and jot down a lot of takeaways. So for me, I've written a lot, no? So as mentioned by our panelists, teleworking, hybrid workplace is really, it poses a lot of challenges, no, in our labor force. One of which, and I think some of the recommendations I've gotten from our panelists is the need to rethink, need to harness our digital skills, need to have that unplugged working policy to address excessive working hours and also to establish a work-life balance. We need to refresh our value proposition to attract more quality talents, no, in terms of incentives, in terms of career progressions, and also to retain our existing employees. Okay, we are now down to our last question. Okay, the last question is, the seed gist or the spirit of the day has embraced mental health as part of an individual's holistic wellness. How does this factor in workplace well-being during and after this pandemic? How should companies and human resource practitioners support workers' mental health given the current uncertainties in the labor market and the economy at large? Okay, we'll start with Ms. Frankie.
Thanks, Director Jing. So definitely mental health, employee well-being, that's one of the things that we need to take care of. It's interesting because in the past, it was a differentiator for employers, right? A good sort of talent attraction strategy to have these kinds of employee engagement, employee well-being programs in place. But it's not a means to attract talent anymore. It's an absolute must. It's an imperative. It's not going to be a differentiator. It's a basic requirement. So that's one of the things that the IT BPM industry is fully focused on, particularly because there are so many changes that we kind of have to navigate and be sensitive to. So this applies to not just our workers in the front line, but also up to the leadership levels. This is a conversation that happens at the board level because with the sort of harrowing experience that everybody has gone through over the past couple of years, it's important to stay connected with our various employees and also the nature of the sector where we are actually spread across different locations and different geographies. One sort of change or adjustment that also we were able to observe is that when we had to very quickly shift to a remote working environment, let me take a step back. There are certain subsectors within the IT BPM industry that are just ready and able to quickly move to that remote and hybrid working environment. But there are some that had to go through a lot in order to make that happen. And so there's that logistical aspect that we had to take care of. But at the same time, we needed to be very sensitive to the employee well-being component, as everybody goes through that change as well. So gone were the days where you had like a set of employee engagement good to haves, but now it is part of the entire strategy, not just ensuring that we're able to attract the right talent, but also retain them and really take care of them across the different functions that we need to do.
Okay, thank you, Miss Frankie. Miss Jade. You're on, nakamute po kayo.
Apologies. Thank you, Director Jing. Yeah, psychological well-being increases people's perception of their ability to function. So it's really important for people now to feel that they're really connected and that they're heard. And in that mental health factor in the workplace, if it's something that is being addressed early on, then it could really impact as well how in the long term employees could continue to be motivated in whether the shift again into a hybrid setup from being now remote would happen in such a very quick manner. As we know, a hybrid model has been there for already decades past, but everybody's just now experiencing this in a very quick manner now, and that everybody is kind of also overwhelmed. But with addressing mental health in the form of programs continually in community care, for instance, and in targeting specific also sections within the organization who actually express or have these more expressed in, let's say, surveys that come up as topics of interest for them, then the faster the interventions could be to remedy these situations.
Thank you. Mr. Samir.
Thank you, Director Jing. Just to add, I don't have too much to say on this. I think everything that needs to be said has been said. But the couple of things that it's important for us to keep in mind, especially for large organizations, right? This is the prospect of a labor shortage would be likely if employees, in terms of occupational safety and health, even with the vaccination, sort of providing counseling, whatever we need to sort of keep employees engaged is going to be actually very, very critical. When you think of, when somebody decides to take a job, right, as a fresh graduate, they are about to enter an IT BPO company or even join Globe, you have a reservation wage. That's what we call it. Economists call it a reservation wage, which is if you pay me 20,000 pesos or 25 or 30 per month, maybe I'll go. Maybe that has gone up now, right? Because people are weighing risks. The risks of working, the risks of being with other people, if they are living with older parents, older grandparents. So you have to weigh those risks. And at some point, if you want to really make sure that the right talent gets attracted to the right types of jobs, we definitely have to think and rethink the workplace, especially when we think of a large organization that needs a lot of people. Because you see in advanced countries right now, you must have seen in the news, in the US especially, labor shortage has become critical, and especially in the service sector, because people are weighing cost and benefit. It's at the end of the day, it's about, should I risk myself to go get sick, or should I just stay home and try to find a job that allows me to stay home, right? So this is very important to keep in mind as we go forward, as we rethink the workplace. That's it, Director Jing, over to you.
Okay, I was told by the Secretariat that we have run out of time. So at this point, may I request our guests and our panelists to have their short but sweet final word. Okay, we'll start with Mr. Rene. Sir Rene. You're on mute, sir.
Sorry. First, thank you very much to DOLE for sponsoring this program. I think it's truly very, very timely and very important for us to be able to ensure that our people are likewise also guided in what's in store for them. The pandemic has really brought down a lot of the hopes and brought a lot of fears. But I'm still very, very optimistic that the Filipinos will really get back to where they should really be, top leaders in the industry, where they are, because of the resiliency, but most importantly, the talent that they have. And I'm sure that with the help of our friends in the Department of Labor, and likewise also the different counselors in here, that we should be working hand in hand together, both together with business and likewise also with government agencies, to be able to pull forward what we believe should really be what the Filipinas should be. And building what we truly believe our vision is for us to be able to see a Philippines where their families' dreams can come true, the businesses flourish, and most importantly, the nation is admired. Thank you very much for inviting me today.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pu?
Yes, thank you, Director Jing. I think just one quick message, one short message, which is that I think now, I think it's clear to everyone that the value of our employees, the value of our workforce is more critical than ever. And I think for businesses and how we approach the way our economies run, to start thinking more about the value of those workers and to engage in more dialogue. And so to really encourage businesses, to really strengthen that manager-employee relationship, to really discuss these issues that really affect everyone in terms of the mental health, the changing workplace dynamics, and how to make it more effective and productive for all while ensuring everyone's well-being and welfare. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Samir?
Just to add to what Fu said, I think for any big organization, employees they're the lifeblood of their organization. So we definitely do need to take care of that. And I think DOLE plays a critical role in this, in facilitating that, the right types of employees end up in right types of jobs, and we take care of our workers. And at the end of the day, I think we do need to ensure that as we go forward. Over to you, Director Jing.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jade?
Yes, thank you. Thank you again for this wonderful session we're having today. And thank you to all our co-panelists also, and Director Jing. So the pandemic has truly changed the nature of work and the types of job we do today, and it will continue to do so. And it's already altered our knowledge and skills that individuals need to be more effective. So just makes sense perhaps to our career advocates is to stay mindful of the need to consistently challenge yourself, and our stakeholders also to continue to make that impact through our work in our lives. And hopefully through this hybrid work becoming more and more common in the future, which is already now, we would be creative and innovative enough to purposefully engage organizations and the people we work with hand in hand. Thank you for today.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jade. Ms. Frankie?
Thank you, Director Jing, and thank you once again to DOLE for inviting IBPAP. The IT-BPM sector is one of the largest job generators in the Philippines, and it's only there in a top leadership position because of the Filipino talent. So it's really our value proposition when we talk to our investors and locators. It is the talent that is driving and keeping us successful. And so we really want to make sure that we are able to take care of the Filipino talent. Let's not forget the things that we are good at. Then there's so many things, but let's also kind of couple that with some of the things that we need to start to learn, because we want to keep that leadership position, our popularity when it comes to our investors and locators across the globe. So we want to make sure that we can continue to look to the present and keep building our skills and competencies so that we can do better and get more of our global market in the future. Maraming salamat po.
Okay, maraming salamat po. Again, thank you to all our resource speakers and panelists for today. Indeed, our people is our most prized asset, and we have to take care of them. Okay, maraming salamat at mabuhay po tayong lahat. Let me now give the virtual floor back to Jessica. Jess, take it away.
Thank you, Deputy Executive Director Jing, and to our speakers and panelists. That was a very informative and productive discussion that I think I have to agree with what Director Jing have mentioned earlier. I hope we have more time to continue with our discourse this morning, but yeah, we have limited time. But thankfully, we had one insightful and productive session. Now, at this point, we will have a group photo opportunity together with our esteemed guest speakers and panelists, and of course, our moderator. Kindly turn on your cameras and hold your beautiful smiles for a photo.
All right. Okay. So, is everyone here? All right. Okay, everyone. All right. Can you stand by? In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Smile. One more. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Smile. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much once again. Now, before we end today's session, here are a few reminders and announcements. The final webinar installment, Webinar 3, is scheduled on 6th of December 2021, that's Monday, and the NCAC culminating activity is scheduled on 10th of December 2021, that's Friday. Once again, the Webinar 3 webinar installment is scheduled on December 6th and NCAC culminating activity on December 10th. Mark your calendars as this will be as exciting and full of a pack of learnings, from our esteemed speakers. And we hope to see you guys there once again. For more updates and for those who missed today's session as well as the first webinar, you may visit the 5th NCAC event website at 5thNCAC.vx-events.com. Live stream coverage can also be accessed via the DOLE and Bureau of Local Employment Facebook page. I believe we have been receiving some questions earlier via Zoom asking for copies or at least a reference of today's session as well as the previous session. Well, guess what? You may repeatedly watch, our live coverage on Facebook Live, and we hope to really give you some of the copies of today's session. Also, don't forget to answer the post-activity evaluation at the end of the session. Link will be posted at the Zoom chat box and Facebook live comments section. Now, we have come to the end of our program, and to formally close today's session, we have the DOLE Assistant Secretary for Labor Relations, Social Protection, and Policy Support. He also sits in the UDFAST Governing Board as a permanent representative of the DOLE. A career executive service officer, he has served as the director of the DOLE regional offices in Calabarzon and the National Capital Region, and former OIC executive director of the National Wages and Productivity Commission. He obtained his Master of Arts degree in Development Studies with specialization in Human Resources and Employment from the Institute of Social Studies, The Hague, Netherlands in 2002. A warm welcome for DOLE Assistant Secretary Alex V. Avila for a few words.
Good morning to all participants and our resource persons to this BLE webinar number 2 with the main theme, the hybrid workplace, rethinking employee engagement and productivity in the new normal. As part of the 5th National Career Advocacy Congress, with the overall theme, Learn, Adapt, Thrive, Rising Above Employment Challenges in the Post-Pandemic Future. This webinar aims to widen and deepen our understanding of the challenges and opportunities related to remote work and hybrid workplaces. The Congress, which is being held in line with the implementation of the National Employment Recovery Strategy, seeks to engage key stakeholders in a comprehensive dialogue on preparing young people for the future labor market under the so-called new normal. The presentations have given us important insights on how desired workplace results could be achieved in a hybrid workplace under the new and hopefully better normal. The key message of our resource persons and panelists is clear. The business as usual mindset has neither place nor future in the new workplace, which is not only mainly driven by technology and managed and operate with minimal physical interaction among the managers and employees, but is also looked upon by society to fulfill its economic role in a safe and sustainable manner. This conversation comes at a time when both policymakers, employers, and employees alike continue to grapple with the hard realities of the new workplace. Based on the initial results of some surveys, both here and abroad, the wildcard appears to be the readiness and willingness of employees to go back physically to work. This is grounded on the feeling of some employees, especially the younger ones, that those who work in person have better career opportunities in the future than their colleagues who work remotely. In other words, the prospects of career advancement and progression. Indeed, there are some aspects of work that aren't easily scaled digitally. As our HR practitioners can attest to, younger workers typically prioritize opportunities for career growth over other factors that comprise job satisfaction. In a 2019 survey, for instance, almost 1 in 4 workers aged 18 to 34 said that having opportunities to advance was the most important factor in their overall happiness at work, compared with 14% among workers aged 35 to 54 and 6% among workers aged 55 and over. I think this happiness at work theme will continue to frame the manner by which employers will design and manage their business and human resource strategies. Beyond ensuring that the technological foundation is there, management will need to seriously consider how hybrid workplaces, where half of the workforce is physically present and the other half is physically absent, can nurture happiness at work toward meaningful employee engagement to achieve and sustain desired level of productivity and deliver shared workplace outcomes. The key is to make sure that remote work does not leave any worker behind. On this note, let me express our thanks and gratitude to our resource persons and panelists for this webinar. Once again, good morning to all.
Thank you, ASEC Alex. And once again, thank you to our speakers, panelists, and participants for joining us this beautiful Friday morning. It has been a fruitful and enriching session, and I am hoping to see you at the succeeding leg of this year's webinar series. Again, I'm Jessica Garcia, and this has been the 5th National Career Advocacy Congress, Webinar 2. Isang mapagpalang umaga po sa ating lahat.